Here is the President of the United States today in a Rose Garden press conference with the Prime Minister of Spain.
They were fighting for our flag. They were fighting for our national anthem. And for people to disrespect that by kneeling during the playing of our national anthem, I think is disgraceful.
Of course, the United States of America has never gone to war over the flag or the national anthem. This country did not even have a national anthem until long after World War I. We've been here before, a president trying to score political points with the flag instead of the quality of his governance, a Republican president. After the Supreme Court ruled that flag burning was protected by the First Amendment, President George H.W. Bush led Washington Republicans in an attempt to amend the Constitution to protect the flag, with the president saying that the flag was just too sacred to be exposed to the First Amendment. The Republicans knew that the amendment could not win the necessary two-thirds vote in the House and the Senate, but Washington Republicans were hoping to draw enough Democrats into what they would then characterize as a defense of flag burning. Nebraska Democrat Bob Kerrey rose in opposition to that amendment in the Senate. When he spoke, everyone knew that they were listening to a former Navy SEAL who lost half of his right leg in Vietnam and had been given the Medal of Honor by Republican President Richard Nixon during the war.
To take the American flag and use it, not just to perhaps win the majority in the Senate, not just perhaps to win a few elections in November, that's the least of what they'll accomplish. The greatest victory, if you can call it a victory, is the Republican president, the leader of the United States of America, at a time when we've got a great opportunity to use this moment in history when peace is breaking out all over. He will divide the nation again. That's what he's doing. Not rallying Americans to respect the flag, not rallying Americans to respect freedom, but by using it as a political issue to divide America again, he gains a marginal political advantage and loses a great deal as well.
We're joined now by Richard Allen Smith, a contributor for Esquire, who's also an Afghanistan war veteran, back with us, Jason Johnson. And Richard, the words Bob Kerrey was using about this kind of use of the flag for divisiveness, political divisiveness, you could take some of those lines and they sound perfectly appropriate to what we're watching today.
They absolutely do, and that's exactly what Trump's trying to do. But I want to point out real quick that this protest, that players' protest, is not about the flag. It's not about the anthem. It's about Anthony Lamar Smith, who was killed by a St. Louis police officer who said, "We're going to kill this guy," before he then killed this guy, and just this month was acquitted in his trial. It's about Tamir Rice. It's about Mike Brown. It's about the repeated incidents of black people being murdered by law enforcement in America with impunity. And I'm glad they're doing it.
Richard, as an Afghanistan veteran, what is your reaction to what the president says when he says they fought for our flag, they fought for our national anthem?
I didn't fight for any flag or anthem, and I don't know anybody that did fight for a flag or anthem. The guys that I went to war with, they fought for the guy to their left and to their right, not any piece of cloth or whatever that symbolizes. That's what I think of what Trump said. Who said he's ashamed today? This is a man who has no capacity for shame. He's a serial sexual predator and a bigot. He's made his career about devaluing the lives of black and brown people, going back to the Central Park Five. This is absolutely ridiculous. This has no impact on anybody that's ever served that I know, and I'm just ashamed that this is our president and this is the kind of thing that he spends his time talking about.
Jason, there he is in the Rose Garden with a foreign leader, and he can't get himself away from the flag and the national anthem.
I mean, first and foremost, he didn't know the difference between a president and a prime minister, as he tweeted out, didn't have the name right. But yes, it just shows the focus of this presidency, right? You don't want to focus on health care. You don't want to focus on Puerto Rico. You want to focus on people that you think you can beat up on. And that's been one of the big issues here. Donald Trump thinks, hey, I can get a victory. I can talk about entitled black athletes who make too much money. He thinks that's going to be successful for him. The problem is there is an extent to which you can run outrage, and then it runs out. How angry are people going to be? They're going to keep watching football. They're going to keep watching Cam Newton and Russell Wilson and Tom Brady. So this is a losing proposition for him, and he can keep beating that same racist drum. It's not going to change the reality of his failed presidency.
And Richard, one of the differences, or may not be a difference, but in the 1990 version of this with the Republicans in Washington, it was an extremely calculated play. They were doing this very particularly for calculated political advantage. Their pollster, Bob Teeter, calculated how it would work for them. It's not clear that this was such a real political calculation by Donald Trump. Might have been, but we never know whether it was just something that came out off the top of his head or whether there was any calculation behind it.
I mean, I think it's absolutely calculated. This is what this man does. He tries to set up debates about you're either on the side of him and America or you're on the side of black people because you can't see both, or brown people. And I'd just encourage my colleague that's on here with me next time that he starts naming off NFL quarterbacks, he remembers Trevor Siemian out here in Denver.
Does he count as a quarterback?
Yeah. And Jason, this reverence for the flag for Donald Trump apparently extends to the Confederate flag that so many of his followers, we don't know how many followers, but plenty of Donald Trump supporters wave the Confederate flag sometimes more than the American flag.
Yeah, at NASCAR, in Charlottesville, and tons of different places. You know, the degree to which somebody is offended by the flag is the degree to which you want to use it for whatever political motivations that the president happens to have. But here's the other thing. When you talk about these notions of respect, he doesn't have credibility to talk about respect. And no one in his administration, including his spokesperson Sanders and press secretary, no one seems to want to talk about the core issue. What are you and Jeff Sessions actually going to do about unarmed black people being murdered? That's an issue. That's an actual concern. Do something about that policy-wise. But instead, you'd rather say this is about the flag, this is about ungrateful black people, all these things that are missing. And I think also what it exposes, and this is a larger issue that he doesn't seem to realize and why so many owners are angry, it makes football unhappy for everybody. Nobody wants their entertainment to become a litmus test for where your politics are. People just want to be able to watch the games. And he's ruined that for conservatives and liberals.
And, Richard, that we have reporting recently about how the NFL was actually paid by the federal government to basically have these patriotic demonstrations at football games that they didn't used to have. The teams used to be in the locker room when the national anthem was being played, come out afterwards. But they started paying them in the hope that this might stimulate recruitment.
Yeah, I don't know what to say to that. If you're going to join the military and raise your right hand over some guys that you saw on a football game, I don't know. Good for you, I guess. I don't know anybody who
so when you were
joined for
Richard,
that reason.
when you were in the Army, you never heard anybody say, "Well, it was watching those NFL players during the national anthem that made me want to do this."
No, I never heard that. What I did hear was people say that they want to defend freedom, such as the freedom of speech, the freedom to not have your president come after your job on live television with a private employer because you spoke up against something for something he doesn't agree with. Not that specific example, of course, but that's the sentiment that I think most of our troops and our veterans served for, right? We signed up to defend with our lives, if necessary, the very rights that Donald Trump and his administration are trampling on. And I would add to my colleague there, it's not just that Trump isn't talking about these things. His administration is actively doing things that make it harder for black people and brown people in America to stay alive, which we just saw in the speech from Jeff Sessions earlier today.
Richard Allen Smith, Jason Johnson, thank you both for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.